Have you ever wondered what actually happens when a family inherits a property and not everyone agrees on what to do next? Maybe you've heard stories where one person wants to sell, another wants to keep the home, and someone else just isn't responding at all. Or maybe you're dealing with this right now and you're asking yourself, what happens if heirs disagree during probate, and how do we actually move forward? Because here's the reality. This situation is more common than people expect. And when disagreements happen, they don't just slow things down, they can completely stall the process. So the real question becomes, do you try to figure it out as you go? Or do you understand how the process works so you can handle it the right way? Because how you approach this can either protect the value of the property or create delays, stress, and unnecessary complications. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happens and, more importantly, how to handle it step by step. Stay tuned. Hello folks, this is Rob Clark, a local real estate agent serving Washington, D.C. and Maryland. On this channel, we break down what it's really like to live, work, eat, and play in this area, using real insight and clear explanations so you can make confident decisions. If you're thinking about moving to D.C., relocating within Maryland, selling your home, or just want a realistic view of what life looks like here in 2026, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you're notified every time we release a new video. We help people relocate from all over the country, and we absolutely love it. So when you're ready to explore your options, give us a call, text, or email anytime. So what actually happens when heirs don't agree? First, decision stall. If one person wants to sell and another does not, the property typically cannot move forward without alignment or legal resolution. Second, time starts to add up. Court timelines extend, communication slows, and the property may sit unused. Third, ongoing costs continue. Taxes, maintenance, insurance, these don't stop, even if decisions do. And over time, that can impact the overall outcome. Step 1, communication first. The first step is always communication, and I want to slow this down for a moment because this step is often underestimated. People hear communication and they think it just means having a conversation. But in situations like this, it's much deeper than that because you're not just dealing with a decision, you're dealing with people with different experiences, different expectations, and sometimes very different emotional connections to the property. So before anything else, you want to understand where each person is coming from. Not just what they want, but why they want it, because two people can want completely different outcomes, but for reasons that actually make sense when you understand them. So start by asking the right questions. What is each person's goal? Is it financial? Are they thinking about maximizing value or accessing funds quickly? Is it timing? Do they need to move forward sooner rather than later? Are there outside circumstances influencing their decision? Or is it emotional attachment? Maybe someone grew up in the home. Maybe it represents a connection to a loved one. Maybe letting go of the property feels like letting go of something bigger. And when those emotions are involved, the decision is no longer just logical, it becomes personal. Now here's where things usually start to go wrong, when those perspectives are not clearly communicated. Because when communication breaks down, assumptions take over. One person may think someone is being difficult, when in reality they're just unsure. Another may feel pressured when they actually just need more time to process and without clarity. Those small misunderstandings turn into larger disagreements. But when you create space for open, structured communication, everything starts to shift. People feel heard, positions become clearer, and more importantly, you start to see where alignment might actually exist, because in many cases, the disagreement isn't as far apart as it initially seems. Now, sometimes the solution is straightforward. One person may decide to buy out the others, allowing them to keep the property while everyone else receives their share. In other situations, everyone may agree to sell and divide the proceeds in a way that feels fair and transparent. And in some cases, there may be a hybrid solution where timing is adjusted or certain conditions are agreed upon to make the outcome work for everyone, but none of that happens without clarity first. And that's why communication isn't just the first step, it's the foundation for everything that follows.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening.
Step 2, the role of the executor. Now let's talk about the executor, because this is where structure begins to take shape. The executor is responsible for managing the estate, but more importantly, they are responsible for making sure the process continues moving forward. Think of them as the coordinator. They're not just handling paperwork. They're helping connect all the moving parts. That includes managing the property itself, coordinating communication between heirs, working alongside attorneys and professionals, and making sure everything follows legal requirements. They are essentially the central point of organization. But here's the key point, and this is where a lot of confusion happens. The executor guides the process. They don't control every decision. They don't have unlimited authority. They can't simply decide what happens based on personal preference. And they can't ignore the rights of other heirs. Every decision they make has to align with legal guidelines and serve the best interest of the estate as a whole. So when disagreements come up, the executor steps in as a stabilizing force. They help gather input from all parties, clarify what options are available, and keep the process from becoming disorganized. In some cases, they may suggest a direction based on practicality or legal advice. They may coordinate meetings, work with attorneys, or bring in additional professionals if needed. But if agreement still can't be reached, that's when the process naturally moves to the next level.
Right. I totally agree.
And this is where understanding the available paths becomes critical. Step 3, mediation versus legal action. If communication doesn't resolve things, there are two primary paths forward, and the difference between these two paths can significantly impact time, cost, and overall experience. The first path is mediation. This is often the most practical and effective next step. Mediation brings in a neutral third party, someone who is not emotionally connected to the situation, and whose role is to guide the conversation in a productive way. They don't take sides. They don't make decisions. Instead, they create structure around the discussion. They help each party express their position clearly. They identify areas of agreement, and they help work toward a resolution that everyone can accept. And here's what makes mediation powerful. It slows things down just enough to remove emotion from the decision-making process. It allows people to think more clearly and see options they may not have considered before. In many cases, this is where solutions are found. Now, the second path is legal action, and this is where the court becomes involved. This typically happens when all other efforts have been unsuccessful. One of the most common outcomes in this situation is something called a partition action. This is when the court steps in and determines how the property will be handled. And in many cases, that results in the property being sold, even if not everyone initially agreed. Now here's the important part. Once legal action begins, you're no longer in a flexible environment. The process becomes more rigid, more time-consuming, and more expensive. There are legal fees, court timelines, formal procedures, and while it does provide a resolution, it often comes at a higher cost, both financially and emotionally. So the goal is always to resolve things earlier, if possible. Because the earlier a resolution is reached, the more control everyone has over the outcome.
Court dismissed! Bring in the dancing lobsters!
Step 4, real estate strategy. Now, once a decision is made, especially if selling is involved, this is where a lot of people assume the hard part is over. But in reality, this is where execution becomes just as important as the decision itself, because the way the property is handled from this point forward directly impacts the final outcome. And this is where strategy comes in. First, property condition. Has the home been maintained? Does it need updates? Are there small improvements that could make a meaningful difference? Sometimes it's simple things, cleaning, decluttering, minor repairs. Other times there may be larger considerations, and knowing what to do and what not to do matters. Next, pricing strategy. This isn't just about picking a number, it's about understanding the market, buyer behavior, and positioning the property correctly from the start, because pricing too high can slow momentum, pricing too low can leave value on the table, so this step requires precision. Then presentation and timing, photos, marketing exposure. When the property goes live, All of these factors influence how buyers respond, and when multiple heirs are involved, coordination becomes even more important. Access to the property agreement on decisions during the process, responsiveness when offers come in. Without alignment here, things can slow down again. So this step is about execution, taking a resolved decision and turning it into a successful outcome.
Nice.
Here's how I look at this from a practical standpoint. You're not just dealing with a property, you're dealing with different perspectives, different timelines, different priorities. So the process needs structure. Step 1, communication. Step 2, coordination. Step 3, resolution. Step 4, execution. Most people try to handle everything at once, and that's where things break down. But when you approach it step by step, it becomes manageable. And that's how I approach real estate. It's not just about the transaction, it's about helping people move forward in a way that makes sense for their situation. If you're dealing with a probate situation or trying to figure out what to do with an inherited property, let's talk through it. Every situation is different, and the right approach comes down to understanding your options and making decisions that move things forward in a clear, structured way. Call, text, or email me for a personalized consultation. And if this video helped you better understand how to handle disagreements during probate, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss future breakdowns. I'm Robert Clark, helping you make smart, strategic moves in DC and Maryland. See you in the next video.